So if you're thinking about becoming a guest on a podcast, before you start reaching out to podcast hosts, review your online presence. Check that your website's up to date. Check your social media platforms. Make sure that if somebody looked you up, that you're giving the impression that you want to project. Make sure everything is, you're recognizable. Have a nice profile photo, that kind of thing. Because I think the first thing hosts tend to do is look you up. They want to make the right impression, and then invest in some equipment. Because if you're going to make this strategy a part of your marketing strategy.
Talking with the experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. My name's Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. And Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. And you can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Victoria Bennion, who is from the UK. And her business is Victoria Bennion Podcast Booking Agency. So guess what we're talking about today? Yay, growing your business with podcast interviews. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you for having me, Rose. Glad to be here.
Oh, great. So you are the founder of the Victoria Bennion Podcast Booking Agency, and you work with entrepreneurs, coaches, and authors to build their brands and grow their businesses through leveraging podcast interviews. And you're a trained journalist, a qualified marketer, and an experienced social media manager. Wow. And you've been helping authors and businesses reach their goals with effective marketing solutions for nearly 20 years. My goodness, you don't look that old.
Thank you.
That's true. So, what I wouldn't.
Flashing lights. Appreciate it.
So tell me a little bit more about, I know what podcast booking agencies do, but, just tell our audience a little bit of background about, why you do what you do.
Why? Okay, well, I guess I began my career in journalism because I enjoyed storytelling. It wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. I was quite headstrong. I was really into English at school, and I thought journalism was writing, writing stories, and that's not quite the case. So from there, I moved on into a career in communications, which is again kind of sharing stories. And I was working with authors and small businesses when I took a Tim Grahl marketing course, book marketing especially. And one of the strategies that he mentioned was podcast interviews for authors and how beneficial they were into getting your work seen by new audiences. So I tried it with a couple of clients that I had, and she had some really good results. And I took on a new client just especially to do that. And I found it really exciting, making the connections for people, helping them share their stories. So that's kind of how I got to how I am. So when I work with a client, I work out who their target audience is. We talk about who they want to connect with. And then, that's the great thing about podcasts, isn't it? They have such niche audiences that you can really speak to your people and have meaningful conversations. So that's what we do, really connect people.
Yeah, I recently had an interview with someone who's into public speaking, and we had a great conversation about that and about podcasting and why did we each start our own podcast and we were relating to each other about how the connection is that the people that I've met through doing mine, I would have never had crossed paths with them ever. And some of the people are like yourself are very interesting, and they have heaps to share with others, and their voices most often aren't heard because they keep to themselves, and podcasts are just such a great platform to leverage.
Yeah. I think it's a lesser known benefit, isn't it, as well? I think when people are thinking about, oh, I'll be a guest on podcast, the first thing they think is, the reach of the podcast. That's kind of the main thing. And actually, there's the connection and the networking, and there's just so many benefits to it.
There is, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I've made some like really good met some really good acquaintances out of it, and we're still in touch. And I think, you know, you're close to my 150th episode, and I've only been going since July. So,
gosh, that's good.
I'm really, you know, and I just love doing it. I just think it's so great.
It's great that it's a one-to-one conversation, isn't it? I think that's another thing where people sometimes will think, oh, it's like public speaking. And I've worked with some authors who are quite hesitant, you know, not so confident in that area, or even small business owners. But actually, if you take that away and you remember that it's a one-to-one conversation and focusing on just your conversation with the host, it's a lot less scary, I think, a lot more doable for people.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, a lot of people that when I first started, I was like really, I guess, gobsmacked because the caliber of guests that I was getting.
Yeah,
people that I just, you know, like Fortune 500 company CEOs and stuff like that, you know. And I thought, oh my, you know, and they just want to talk to me, and I'm like, yay.
Really
yeah,
good.
so it's really, I know, sometimes it's quite mind blowing who your guests are and how they want to reach out to you. But anyway, so tell me a bit more about Tim Grahl's course. Is it like a
Okay, it's a book marketing course, actually. It was on how to launch a bestseller. I think that's the title. He has a few, I think, around the book marketing area, but that was the one that I took because I was working with authors and wanted to improve my skills. So he talks about all the things that you can do in the lead up to a launch to make your book launch successful. Podcast interviews were one of the things that he recommends.
No, okay. And so it is, I guess you got quite a lot out of the course, obviously.
I did. It was really useful. He's really, he really doesn't know his book marketing, but of course, some of the things that he talks about can be applied to businesses and everything, you know, really useful.
Yeah, okay. But I'll have to get on your books for podcast guests.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've helped like hundreds of businesses get on your podcasts, or you know, the ones that you've helped them get podcast interviews.
I've helped. Yes,
and so they in turn have established their authority and built their platform. So, you know, how do they feel about it? You know, these people that are getting these interviews, are they, you know, overwhelmed? I mean, you did sort of touch on a little bit, but, you know, are they getting better at it?
Yeah, I had one author who was quite nervous to start with. But, you know, I think once you've done about 4 to 6, or certainly what she found, once she'd done a few, she was, you know, kind of more practiced with sharing her message. I think the confidence comes. And also then the benefits that she was seeing, the connections she was making. There were further collaborations. She was invited onto one host Facebook group, and she worked in mental health. So it was, I think she was really getting her message out to the right people and was able to help more people. So she enjoyed it. And I, like you said, I think a lot of our clients really enjoy meeting new people, you know, like those connections, I think, are really beneficial.
Yeah. I think too, podcasts have really taken off in the last, you know, 18 months because of the pandemic, because, you know, we've been forced to do digital communications and so forth rather than in person. So, yeah, I think there's about 750,000 podcasts at the moment, which is a lot that, you know, they need to compete against.
That's it. There's so many.
There is a lot, but I mean, if you can get out and stand out,
yeah, absolutely. And they're, you know, such niche audiences. So I think that you can find them in the area that you want to listen to, can't you? Like if you're interested in business, like your podcast, ideal. But you can subscribe to the ones that you want, and then, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you, you know, prefer one platform over another? You know, I'm talking, you know, SoundCloud, iTunes, you know, one of those. Do you recommend, you know, different ones
as
to your
host.
guests or to your
No,
clients?
I don't particularly. I mean, some of our clients have their own podcasts, but some of them are just guests. So yeah, so the ones that are already established, they kind of have them, I think, on a wide range anyway. But yeah, for guests, we just we don't. I mean, we would look at, before we pitch to a podcast, we look at track records to make sure that the podcast is likely to keep running. You know, that it has sort of 20 episodes at least, that the host is a good fit, that it kind of chimes with what what's the word, their culture really. Because you know that podcasts just vary so much. It's not a one size fits all, I guess. So we just do the research that way. I mean, we would look at reviews on iTunes. We'll get just to get a sense of who the audience is and, you know, the kind of things they're saying about the show. So I find that iTunes a good resource, but also listen notes. We look at listen notes and Facebook groups.
I've not heard of Listen Notes, but I might.
Oh, have you not? Okay, it's a podcast search engine. It's quite useful if you're looking for a certain genre that you want to listen to, or yeah, you can just listennotes.com, I believe.
Okay, I'll just write that down because I don't know, I've not heard of it. I've heard of a few others, but that was one that's escaped me. So there you go. Hey, so you live in Dorset in England, which I've heard is an absolutely beautiful place. You see all those the houses with the thatched roofs and all that down there.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Maybe one day I'll get there, but
you should.
Not any time.
You
and you write for children.
I do. That's more of a hobby, but yes, that's something that I like to do. I'm in a member of something called the Golden Egg Academy, which is sort of an editorial service where they help nurture writers. And it's something that I like to do when I've got spare time.
What type of book they're for children you for?
Yeah,
what are the titles of some of your books?
Okay, so I've only had one that was published with the Arts Council, and that was called The Legend of the Golden Carp. So I like adventure stories, middle grade, lots of action.
Very good. So where can we find the book? Is it on?
It's on Amazon, yes. Gosh, I haven't been asked about that for a while. Yes, it's on Amazon. If you search my name or Legend of the Golden Carp, it should come up.
Well, there you go, people. Look for Victoria Bennion in Amazon and you'll find her book, especially if you've got children. And
thank you.
Definitely got to be a good read. So do you have your own podcast, Victoria, just as a matter of interest?
I don't, but I'm going to be launching one in the next month or so. I'm just working on the name at the moment.
No, so I was going to ask you what the name of it was.
Yes, I'd like to focus it, I think, on podcasts, on podcasts. So just thinking about the right name at the moment.
So the theme will be podcasting, basically.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Visibility.
Okay. Let me see. Tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do as in your downtime?
Well, I like to read, and I guess I like to read a lot. So I'm currently reading the Stephen King book, The Institute. Don't know if you've heard of that, but that's quite gripping.
Yes, most of these ones are, aren't they?
Yes, yeah.
My husband was an avid fan of them, and he used to read me some of the stuff, and it's really scary.
But sometimes I think that reading it is less scary than watching a film, because you can kind of control your imagination a bit, can't you, with what you're reading? So you can. I think I must tone it down a bit, because. But I know it's not necessarily a usual choice. I also like to write in my spare time. Go for walks. We live right by the sea, just 5 minutes away, and I've got 2 children, so they keep me quite busy in and around different activities.
Oh, wonderful! And so, is your agency in Dorset, or is it in London?
Yeah, it's in Dorset. I work from Dorset now. We were based in London for a couple of years, but when I had my daughter, we moved back to Dorset. So I just travel up there now. We had a base there for a while, but
Mm.
yeah, well, with everything as well.
Yeah, it's a bit hard
Um,
these days, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it's all the virtual setup as well. So,
Well, you know,
Mhm.
I think the pandemic has done us a service by making us more
Yes,
connected online, because most of us wouldn't have
absolutely.
Zoomed. You know, it was only a Zoom call if
No,
it was you know, a meeting or something urgent. But now it's like, you know, you
yeah,
talk to your parents or your family or
that's
whatever with a
it.
Zoom call or a
Yeah, it's
Facebook time
become
or whatever. So yeah,
totally. Yeah, it's become more part of our lives, hasn't it? Push that forwards, definitely.
I
Yeah,
guess.
we have a lot of people working here because my husband works from home too now. He used to travel about all over the place, but he's very home based. And yeah, we also have my parents, so it's quite packed in.
Yes, it can be a little bit
Yeah,
cozy.
yes.
So I guess what other than authors as your
Yes.
clientele, who else do you have?
Yes. I have coaches. I have other podcast hosts. One is in the health and wellness area. And I think I have a marketing specialist. Yeah, quite wide actually. Funny how people come to us. Leadership, business. It's grown. It started with authors, but then I was finding we were getting inquiries from just people in other areas to work with, and it's beneficial. I think there's so many people.
Oh, good stuff. And
Mm,
so you've written a children's book. Are you going to write a book about podcasting?
that would make sense, wouldn't it? Yes, yes. I think that's definitely going to happen. I can't tell you when, but yes.
No, I've asked a lot of people and they say, yeah, it's in the pipeline, but
Yeah,
yeah, I haven't
I know
got
you
round
need to
to it yet.
commit, don't you? Yeah, you need to commit to the time and block it out, probably.
I think so, yeah. I was going to write a book this year too. That was one of
Oh
my
yeah.
on my bucket list, and I never got round to doing it. I haven't even started it yet. I think it's it's in the too
Yes.
hard basket.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So, have you got any wise words of advice to anyone who either wants to start a podcast or become a guest on a podcast?
Yeah. So if you're thinking about becoming a guest on a podcast, before you start reaching out to podcast hosts, review your online presence. Check that your website's up to date. Check your social media platforms. Make sure that if somebody looked you up, that you're giving the impression that you want to project. Make sure everything is, you're recognizable. Have a nice profile photo, that kind of thing. Because I think the first thing hosts tend to do is look you up. So you want to make the right impression, and then invest in some equipment. Because if you're going to make this strategy a part of your marketing strategy, get an external microphone. You can get a reasonable webcam because a lot of hosts do use video. That's weird.
Mm.
Talking about, and headphones. So just give yourself the best chance of success to start with. And then think about who you want to connect with, who is your audience. And then you can start researching the podcast that would be a good fit for you and that you can offer value to.
Yeah, no, I get a lot of mine through agencies at the moment. So people aren't reaching. Oh, actually, that's not quite true. Just recently, in the last 2 weeks, people have actually been reaching out to me without being in a agency. So,
Yeah,
they've listened to someone else's podcast and reached out to me
yeah,
that way. So I like
yeah.
that. It's nice.
I guess if you've got 150 interviews and everyone's sharing them,
Yes.
yeah, you're going to be reaching such a wider audience, aren't you? Which is
Eventually,
great.
it hasn't got a great listenership at the moment, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, and that will build. That does tend to build, doesn't it?
It does.
Consistency.
Yeah, so anyone who's like going to start a podcast, I've only got, it's not expensive equipment, and I know you don't have to start a podcast with expensive
Yeah,
equipment.
absolutely. Just basic equipment is good enough. It's just that you want your sound quality to be good enough, don't you? Otherwise you don't want to put the audience off. So it's just kind of the basics. I think when you're getting started is fine, or as a guest.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
totally agree with that point there. Yep. There's nothing worse than listening to somebody that you can't hear.
No, and no, it can be really frustrating, can't it?
All right, Victoria. No, yes, it is Victoria.
It is,
Victoria,
right.
sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, I had just had a Natasha on, and I thought, oh God, I haven't confused them, have I? Oh, my bad. Anyway,
worry.
thank you so much for coming on and sharing your tips about podcasting, and and your journey. It was really interesting to
Oh, thank you.
it was interesting. Yeah, my daughter she studied or started to study journalism, and it wasn't for her either. She found out that it just, because she was excellent at writing stories, but it's not what she thought it was, and she dropped out, did something else. Now she's a vet nurse, so.
Oh wow, quite different, but very caring. I guess you have to be to do that, don't you?
Yes, no, she's good at it too. She loves it, but yeah, she found the like going to uni and the tutors were just talking at her, not talking with her, and she just hated that.
Yeah, it can be quite hard-nosed. That's what I found. Quite yeah. Yeah. I mean, I worked for a year. Sorry, I worked for a year on a publication in Salisbury, which is about an hour away from here, but it was a monthly publication, so it was a bit kind of softer, not hard news. But I had friends who went into hard news, and it's quite, you do need to be quite tough, I think, to do it, don't you? It's not what you think if you're good at writing stories. This is the ideal career choice.
No, and obviously it's not up to you. You might write a plus story, but it's up to the editor in the end whether they publish it or not.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And it's heartbreaking when you, spend a lot of time gathering information and writing this great story, and the editor says, no, it's crap, and go away.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'll let you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. And
thank you very much.
All right. So yeah.
Great to talk to you, Rose. Okay.
Bye.